No, in this corner.
Ms. Rios, how are you?
Hey, Judge. Good. How are you? Are you talking to me?
I am talking to you.
Okay.
The only Ms. Rios on here. So Mr. Weatherhead showed up earlier today, and then Mr. Dingle, position 14, showed up as well. They were both told to come back now. They're not here yet, but have you?
Yes, I was actually just about to call them because I didn't see them in the courtroom, so I was going to call them now.
Great. Okay, you've got contact info for both of them?
I do.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you.
It's just that if it gets out, it gets out.
Are you Mr. Dingle or you're Mr. Dingle? Great. Ms. Rios, Mr. Dingle is here.
Thank you.
That's all right. Why don't we sort that out first, because the plea will take a minute.
Okay.
Are you going to waive arraignment for Mr. Dingle?
I was submitting that just now, so yes.
All right. So, Mr. Dingle, you're charged in a case with terroristic threats and a couple other things. That voice you hear, I'm actually going to give it a face. There we go. If you can see on the screen, that's Ms. Rios. She's your lawyer, and she will be representing you throughout this process. We missed you this morning.
Yes, sir.
What happened?
So I'm gonna be quite honest with you, Judge. I wasn't even told that I had a court date today. When I woke up this morning, my grandmother informed me that someone made a call to her to say that I had a court date today. I was given a separate court date on the 25th. And so the last time this happened, I ended up having a warrant for my arrest because I did not.
Yeah, you don't want to miss court. So I've got an address for you of Phipps Boulevard, an apartment on Phipps Boulevard. Is that a good address or an old one? So there's a change of address form that one of these deputies is going to get for you. Do you need a pen? Or nope, she's got a pen. Great. If you'd fill that out, Mr. Dingle, all the blanks, your name, your new address, please write legibly. We'll update your address. Did you give Ms. Rios a good phone number for you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. And do you have a good phone number for her?
Yes, sir.
All right. Then once you filled that out, and I can make sure I can read it, then you're going to be able to go. Your lawyer has waived arraignment for you, which just starts the process here in court. And we'll make sure that she gets discovery and we'll go forward.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
May I add a short bit of information?
Sure.
Mr. Dingle, it's your responsibility to keep the clerk updated about any changes in your address. So after today, if you don't update the clerk of the Superior Court about a change in your address and you don't appear for court, your liberty can be taken away because you failed to respond to mail that went to your address. Do you understand? Okay.
I meant to say that. That was well put. So this is an old set of facts. Whatever you allegedly did was 2 years ago. And so, hey, you've moved, that's okay. But from today on, you're free to move. You could go to another spot. But when you do, you got to let Ms. Rios know so she can fill out one of those forms or you fill it out, because we're going to keep firing mail to the address you're writing down right now. And until someone tells me otherwise, that's the right address. And if I see in the system, hey, it went to that address you gave us and you don't show, bench warrant. And I know you don't want that.
I'm so sorry, sir.
You don't have to apologize.
I've been homeless for the past 3.5 months.
Okay.
So to be quite honest with you, I've been looking from my my email for a lot of different things, and I should have been more.
No one's fussing. He was just laying out the rules of the road. So there's no, you're not getting minus points today or anything. It's just Mr. Dingle's case, and we'll move it forward. You should put the most stable address that you have on that piece of paper, whether that's your grandmother or someone else, because that's where we're going to be sending the mail. Sorry, Mr. Christopher, just sorting this out and we'll get to you. You are next. Thank you. Peru as in the country?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Peru, yes.
Yeah, Peru Road. South Carolina?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
My grandparents live in South Carolina. That's the only reason why I don't have a home right now.
Okay. But whatever you've got in terms of email or phone, you've given that to Ms. Rios.
Yes, sir.
All right. Ms. Rios, anything else on behalf of Mr. Dingle?
Sorry, I was muted. No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay. All right, Mr. Dingle, we'll see you soon.
Is Mr. Weatherhead in the courtroom by any chance?
Not yet, but he's got a minute. We have a couple pleas here.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I'm back.
Okay, let's get on the record in 21 SC 177401. It is State versus Landon Christopher. Mr. Christopher is here in court with his relatively new lawyer, Mr. Wright. And Mr. Armstrong is here for the state. Mr. Christopher had a trial several years ago, was found guilty of hit and run, was sentenced, and during the course of the litigation of his motion for new trial, I determined that I had made a mistake in charging the jury. Not that the evidence was weak or anything like that, but that I didn't fully inform the jury of their burden. And the state has actually appealed that order granting the motion for new trial, but it's kind of on hold. It was a timely notice, but the clerk's office is holding off on transmitting the record to the Court of Appeals because Mr. Armstrong alerted me and the clerk of court that it appeared that now there was a plea. Is that the plan, Mr. Wright?
Yes, Your Honor. We've been, for the last few weeks, trying to hammer out a negotiated plea. We did come to an agreement for the court's consideration, and the plea would, I guess, negate the need to go forward on the appeal.
All right. Mr. Armstrong, when you're ready.
Before I begin, I'm used to standing during pleas out of respect for the defendant, but does Ms. Rivers need to see my face?
She needs to hear you. That's the critical part. And I can, in case she wants to see your shoulder, I can, here we go. We've got your shoulder and we'll add the podium. And that way she is seeing and hearing everyone.
Okay. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give to the court and the matter now before it will be the truth?
I do.
All right, please state your true, correct, and legal name.
Landon Christopher.
At this time, are you taking any medication or under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or any other substances?
No, sir.
Okay. How old are you and how far have you gone in school?
I'm 35 years of age and I've gotten my GED.
Okay. Can you read, write, and understand the English language?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you understand that in this case that you are charged with hit and run resulting in serious injury or death?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that you have the right to plead either guilty or not guilty to these charges, and that if you plead not guilty or remain silent, you will receive a jury trial?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have you had enough time to speak with your lawyer, Mr. Derek Wright, about all the facts and circumstances known to you regarding the charges in this case, including any potential defenses?
Yes, sir, I have.
And just for the record, this case is 21 SC 177401. Do you need any additional time to speak with your attorney?
No, sir.
Are you satisfied with his services?
Yes, sir.
Do you waive formal reading of the indictment?
So waived.
Do you waive any and all defects in the indictment?
So waived.
Have you already been arrested on these charges? I believe you have, but I just want to make sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Has your attorney advised you of the minimum and maximum sentences you can receive for each charge?
Yes, sir.
Is it your understanding that the crime of hit and run resulting in serious injury or death is punishable by up to 5 years imprisonment?
Yes, sir.
And that given your criminal history, that if you were to be sentenced as a recidivist, which is not the negotiated agreement here today, you would be required to serve the entirety of that 5-year sentence in custody?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you understand that this is a negotiated plea agreement, which means that the state and your attorney are recommending to the court a specific sentence, but that the court does not have to accept that recommendation? Do you
Yes.
understand that?
Yes, sir.
But you do understand that if the court decides not to accept the recommendation, that the court has to let you know in order to allow you to withdraw your guilty plea?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And regarding withdrawal of guilty pleas, one of the issues that we have addressed in the negotiation process was that given the state's notice of appeal, you will be waiving, after the court pronounces sentence, any other right you have to withdrawal of your guilty plea. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
So just to go over that briefly, I've already mentioned that you have the absolute right to withdraw your guilty plea at any point in time up until the court pronounces, that is, says your sentence. This is not affected in this plea for that.
Okay.
But thereafter, you would be able to file within the same term of court a motion to withdraw a guilty plea if you could show a manifest injustice. You're waiving that right and any other right to withdraw your guilty plea after the court pronounces your sentence. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you understand that this plea may be used to enhance sentencing on other convictions in this jurisdiction, as well as other jurisdictions, including federal courts, in the future, should you commit further criminal offenses?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you currently on probation or parole?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you understand that if you are placed on probation of any kind, you cannot violate any criminal laws of any government unit or any special conditions of probation without being subject to revocation for the balance of the sentence?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that you are not allowed to possess or use a firearm while on probation or at any point afterwards because you are a convicted felon?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you understand that if you are not a United States citizen, a guilty plea will affect your immigration status and will result in deportation, just like a conviction at a trial would, and that this is true regardless of any advice that your attorney or anyone else may have provided to you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you understand that not this court, not your attorney, not me, no one in this courtroom has anything to do with parole, the Department of Corrections, or Board of Pardons and Paroles, and no one can guarantee you parole no matter what anyone has told you?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you understand that there may be other adverse or unfavorable consequences as a result of the guilty plea conviction, just as there would be from a conviction following trial?
Yes, sir.
And just for some examples, your guilty plea may affect your right to vote, the right to hold public office, the right to serve on a jury, the right to obtain a passport, the right to receive, possess, or transport a firearm, or the ability to obtain employment. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And I know I've said it already, but I'd just like to go over it. Do you understand that by pleading guilty to a felony, you've already been convicted of a felony previously, but going over it again, if you use, receive, possess, or transport a firearm, that is punishable by 1 to 5 years in prison, or use a firearm in the commission of certain crimes, that it could be up to 15 years consecutive to whatever the other crime would be. And that would be something that would subject you to additional prison time.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you waive any and all defenses, including mental health defenses, by entering a plea of guilty?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that if you went to trial, you would have the right to trial by jury, the right to see, hear, and confront witnesses called to testify against you, and the right to testify or to remain silent and not incriminate yourself?
Yes, sir.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you are giving up
rights, including the following: the right to a trial by jury, the right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself, the right to confront witnesses against you, the right to the assistance of counsel hired by you or to court-appointed counsel if you cannot afford an attorney at a trial of your case, the right to the presumption of innocence, the right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence, the right to subpoena witnesses and compel the production of evidence, the right to have the charges against you proved beyond a reasonable doubt, and the right to appeal if convicted of these charges after trial. Do you understand that you're giving up those rights?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything to get you to enter this guilty plea?
No, sir.
Is it your decision to waive these rights and enter a guilty plea because you are in fact guilty?
Your Honor, I think we're going to tender this under the authority of North Carolina versus Alford. He understands the absolute same legal effect that he is pleading guilty to this. And based on the history that the court has seen in this case, ultimately, I think there's good reason that he believes it's in his best interest to resolve and bring closure to this case for the benefit of himself as well as all parties. So we're asking the court to consider this under the authority of Alford so that he can bring closure to this and take responsibility. But also part of this plea will be working towards restitution and other things for the benefit of the victim. So.
Okay, I'll chat with him about that. I know a little more about the facts of the case than I would in a typical plea, since we had a several-day trial. So your client will need to explain to me a little bit more the basis for the Alford plea.
Understood, Judge.
Just to cover bases, and depending on what the court will say, Mr. Christopher, are you pleading guilty because you've decided that is in your best interest to do so?
Yes, sir.
Are you aware that even if you do not admit guilt, this is a plea of guilty and places you in the same position as if you were convicted by a jury at trial?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How do you plead to the charge of count 1, driving hit and run resulting in serious injury or death?
Guilty.
Is this guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with full knowledge of the charge against you?
Yes, sir, it is.
Do you understand that you may only have a limited right to appeal this guilty plea conviction?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. Do you understand that you only have 4 years from today for a felony charge such as this to file a habeas corpus petition challenging the voluntariness of this guilty plea?
Yes, sir.
Okay. But as we talked before, you can't move to withdraw the guilty plea.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Your Honor, I'm not going to belabor the facts of this particular case. The state incorporates by reference the evidence that was presented at trial, which I understand the court has recently reviewed in its consideration of the motion for new trial. Ultimately, the evidence would show that on December 12th, 2020, that this individual was operating a motor vehicle, which struck Matthew Duffy, causing him quite serious injuries, and which included broken bones, facial fractures, and that he did not stop the motor vehicle and wait for the police to come or any of the other requirements within section 46-270A. That's 40-6-270A. The evidence would be what we presented at trial, including the testimony of the other occupant of the car, the injuries to Mr. Duffy, the phone records of the defendant, as well as his actions before, after, and during the event, including the report of his car being damaged without his knowing. So Your Honor knows what the plea is. The details of the plea are this. It is a 5-3 sentence. The first 3 years to be served in custody with credit for time served, followed by 2 years on probation. The state, for the purposes of this plea, is waiving subsection C recidivism so that he has the possibility of parole. Restitution is to be determined at a hearing following the plea. I had hoped to get Mr. Duffy here today. Unfortunately, given that your chambers was far more responsive than other chambers have been, we asked for a plea hearing date, and I think y'all gave us the next calendar date, which is fantastic, gets it done, but I was not able to get Mr. Duffy in here because he is moving today. So we're asking for a restitution hearing to occur in the next 30 days. And because once the plea goes through, At that same moment, the state will have waived the notice of appeal, and I will file a document later today that will do that in writing.
Waive or withdraw?
Withdraw, excuse me.
Okay.
You are correct. Have I forgotten any part of the plea offer?
Any other condition? I'll let Mr. Wright answer in a moment, but currently no conditions. There would be a requirement to pay restitution if there's a hearing and restitution amounts are adequately proven, but nothing else. Don't drive, or only a license to get to and from work, or stay away from the victim, or I'm not requiring anything else. I just want to make sure you aren't omitting anything.
I would like to point out that I am not frequently in this seat with plea negotiations, and so I apologize. I did not consider that. We did not negotiate any particular agreements, but I would ask that no unnecessary driving be part of the plea.
No unnecessary driving.
I
Okay.
think by operation of law, the statute might automatically suspend. So in other words, the plea itself may ultimately take care of that, where until he got a license back, he wouldn't be able to drive. And then again, in anticipating he has essentially 2 to 3 years to the end of the sentence, it would be probably, I'm guessing, a year from today's date before he can get that license. And again, I'm speculating, but that's if it's a suspension. If it requires a revocation, it would be a 5-year period that he would be subject to not being able to drive. But for the purpose of the plea, I think my client, and if I can just check, will be okay not driving until permission is obtained from the court. If we can set forth circumstances in which driving and any restrictions on that driving would be appropriate.
Okay, that works for me. But number two, I'm not undoing the negotiations. If this wasn't negotiated, then I can impose whatever. I just wanted to make sure, in case Mr. Armstrong had negotiated another condition and had just forgotten it, that he could share it now, but he's explained he didn't, and that's fine too. I'm not being critical, I'm just being curious. I didn't want to omit anything. And as he pointed out, I'm free to say, actually, it's 5 years to serve, or to say, hey, no driving until, or whatever.
And no contact with the victim, I think, is customary and standard. So we wouldn't have any reason to object to that. So at least that, to address that particular part of things, we would be at the court's pleasure.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Armstrong?
If I could just have one moment, Your Honor, make sure I covered everything. I do believe that is it, Your Honor.
Okay. Let me get a little more information. Good morning. It's afternoon. Good afternoon, Ms. Jackson.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Could you remind me, I heard it before when we had the trial, but it's been a little while, the criminal history information on Mr. Christopher, please.
Yes, Your Honor. He has 19 cycles. The last arrest was April the 20th, 2021 in Fulton County for a probation violation. He does have prior felony convictions. Just one in 2012 for possession of cocaine with the intent to distribute. It's one in 2011 for Terroristic Threats Act, and he does have misdemeanor convictions. It's one in 2022 for a hit and run. One in 2018 out of DeKalb County for battery and disorderly conduct. One in 2010 for DUI, and one in 2006 for simple assault. Nothing in addition, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am.
And Your Honor, I just want to point out, I think the 2022 was this case.
Yeah.
And the VOP in 21 was because of this case.
Wow, this case has done a lot for him.
Well, I'm just suggesting that was because of this, he got the VOP, and then, what was that, 30, how many months?
Well, 47 days.
Okay, 47 days he served as a result of that VOP.
Okay. Officer Jolly, is Mr. Christopher on probation now for anything?
No, Your Honor, he is currently inactive. He is not currently on probation.
All right, thank you. Mr. Wright?
Your Honor, as the court's aware, I've come in sort of after a lot of things transpired in this case. One of which the court has the benefit of having conducted a trial. That trial, a verdict issued, and now we're sort of in that appeal posture. In talking to my client, a lot of our discussion was, what is in your best interest in terms of bringing closure and moving forward? And honestly, a lot of that discussion from me to him was also saying, there is a victim in this case. And this also moves us in that direction to bring the victim some closure and victim something by way of restitution, so that for everybody, even though my client may have had some difference of opinion as to some of the facts, some of the evidence, some of the underlying things going into the trial, ultimately coming to a decision to say, hey, you know what, it's in my best interest to take responsibility to get this done and closed and move forward with my life. And that is what sort of brings them here. And that is what I sort of opened the door and reached out to Mr. Armstrong to see, hey, could we figure something out? Much of the past seems to go back to 2012 and before, until we sort of get to this situation. So because of it, though, it puts them in that posture where even though it's a 5-year maximum sentence, it puts them in a day for day kind of posture. And that was another part of the negotiation to say, let's give him the ability to show himself worthy of something different, to prove himself. And that is why the plea terms given to the court is not under Section C, which would require a day for day serve time. He has already done almost over 19 months. So he's done a substantial amount. I anticipate when he gets to corrections, they will consider him. I can't say they'll grant, but he'll be immediately considered for some parole consideration. And the reason that matters, Judge, is what we had hoped for, and it's not a part of this plea, was more of a time served. And the reason is he received SSI. But as the court may be aware, when you are incarcerated, that stops. Once he is released, he'll become eligible again. And part of how he's going to pay towards restitution is through getting SSI payments to him. And it's sort of a strange twist to say, the sooner we can get him SSI, the sooner he can make sure he's making payments for the benefit of the victim. So that's also what we sort of anticipated, or rather contemplated, when we put this together was, can we get him to a situation where he now has the ability to make payments in the furtherance of not just himself, but for the victim. And that's why, as he's tendering an Alford plea, he's saying, you know, he may not agree with everything that transpired, but he does agree that he wants to bring closure to this. He wants the victim to move forward and have positive things for him, as well as himself, his family. And I think his mother has some health challenges as well. So the sooner he can also get back to his family. And again, this isn't a front end plea where someone has not suffered the pain of consequence. He has done significant time. And for that reason, I think the plea makes sense. And in the big scheme of things, when we talk about justice, it seems like it's just to say, we're giving my client an opportunity and we're trying to move forward in the best interest of the victim, and putting them both in a position where, without having contact, he's at least making amends and by taking responsibility for what's transpired. And for that reason, Judge, is why we're asking you to accept the plea as tendered.
Got it. So, Mr. Armstrong, your office has had contact with Mr. Duffy. It's not that you're not sure where he is. In fact, you know where he is, and he can't be here today because he's moving.
Correct. I spoke with him about an hour ago. Earlier in the process, earlier this year, I spoke to him, and he obviously was not happy about the order granting the new trial. However, his main concern was the issue of restitution because he is still being harmed by these events. And so that is what Mr. Duffy's primary concern was at that time. Mr. Duffy was in the middle of a pre-planned move, and so he was not able to be here today. I gave him the Zoom, but I don't expect him to be able to show on the Zoom because of he's in the process of moving.
Okay. I'm not faulting him at all, and it sounds like you have very good contact information for him. Okay, Mr. Christopher, do you have questions about anything we discussed?
I just want to address the court as far as to Mr. Duffy. I do want to say that I'm sorry this happened to him, and I wouldn't want to wish this on anybody. Thank God that he's still with us. I just hope upon this case closing that it can bring some sort of closure to both sides, especially him, and maybe some healing process after this. And I'm truly sorry this event took place.
Okay, well, I appreciate that. That is a much more generous spirit than you showed back in December of 2020. My understanding of the facts, and they were pretty clear, was not just that you failed to stop the vehicle, but in fact, you did stop your vehicle and were trying to find the side view mirror that had struck Mr. Duffy so hard that it tore off the car. And when you noticed the moaning body lying in the grass, you told your girlfriend or whatever the relationship was with the young lady to get back in the car, and then you took off. So insofar as it's important to anyone, I think the evidence was more than sufficient to meet the correct set of elements for hit and run. I just didn't tell the jury that. And that's why I struggled with it, because I think the state clearly vaulted the pole they needed to vault. But I believe I misinformed the jury as to what they needed to find for it to be hit and run. In other words, the state needed to have shown that you were aware that you hit someone who had been injured. Because people drive along on Atlanta roads all the time and there's a thump and you think it's a pothole. And if you realistically and reasonably thought it was just a pothole and not a body lying on the ground, I don't think that you're liable for hit and run legally. It's not a moral observation. But the way I charged the jury, they didn't have to find that you knew that your car had struck someone and injured someone. I think that's an element of the crime. We don't need to resolve my interpretation of the statute, given how things are playing out. But it brings me to my question about it being an offered plea. An offered plea is when a defendant says, not only is it in my best interest to enter this plea, I get that part because you're going to get out of jail sooner. Of course, that's in your best interest. But it also is, I don't agree with everything the state says. And Mr. Armstrong didn't say a whole lot about the facts of the case other than you hit someone and you drove away. I'm adding the finer point that you hit someone, stopped, saw the guy lying there moaning in the grass, and then drove away. I'm not understanding I don't agree with all the facts. And we don't need to dissect it entirely. In fact, Mr. Wright may not want you to in case things veer in another direction. But I need to understand at a high level what it is you disagree with the recitation that you hit someone, you were aware that you hit someone, and you didn't stop and render aid. And that doesn't mean necessarily you're doing CPR. We don't know how to do that, but you're at least doing, if it's not CPR, it's 911. Hey, there's this guy sitting in the grass. And that is clearly not what happened on December 12th of 2020.
Okay, Judge, to answer that question, Miss Newborn told those, I didn't get up and testify. She told those version of events. And I don't know if you remember or not, she told several different stories.
She did? One time she was driving, and another time you were driving.
She said that she thought that we hit a deer.
Mm-hmm.
She said that she thought that or she didn't find out that it was a person until days later. So I would ask that you take that in consideration, because we're just hearing from her testimony. She also lied at the beginning of this and said she knows for a fact that she wasn't involved in a hit and run, that I wasn't involved in a hit and run, that this car wasn't involved in a hit and run. So to answer your question though, sir, I just, she was all that everybody was going by, and she's done lied to me so many times. So I disagree with her version of what happened. And she said that I had my cell phone with me, and the cell phone records came back and said that his cell phone wasn't even in the area. So I just, to that point, sir, I just say that I disagree with Ms. Newborn's facts, and that's all we had to go by during the trial.
But
Got it.
do you take responsibility?
But I do, but to be clear, I do take full responsibility at this point. And like I said, I just want to bring closure to both parties and start the healing process for my family and his family.
Okay. All right. Mr. Christopher, I find there's a factual basis for your plea, having heard an entire trial about the evidence. I also find that your plea is knowing and voluntary. Voluntary means no one's forcing you to enter this plea, but you've decided after consulting with Mr. Wright, as well as maybe some of your family members, that it's in your best interest to enter the plea. And knowing simply means you've understood everything we spoke about. You agree with both those things?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Wright, is it okay if someone on my staff signs the indictment on your behalf?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Armstrong, can we electronically sign for you?
You can.
Mr. Christopher, I think when we had the trial, you actually signed the indictment at the start of the trial saying not guilty, but now you're pleading guilty. So there's going to be a new entry on the indictment. May we electronically sign your name indicating that offered plea?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I will accept this as an offered plea, given your explanation. Your original sentence was 4 years to serve, but it was 4 years as what we call a C recidivist. So as you knew at the sentencing hearing, that meant you were going to serve all 4 of those years. You served however much time you served, you'll get credit for that. Your sentence now as to the only remaining count, and I should get on the record, there was one other count in your indictment, false report of a crime, but I directed a verdict on that and no one has challenged that. So that remains a directed verdict. So as to the one count of conviction in the form of your plea, I'm sentencing you to 5 years to serve 3 years with the balance on probation. The credit you get will be determined by the custodian, meaning the Department of Corrections, and they'll do the math to see how long you've been there and a little bit of time that you were in custody here in Fulton County. There will be 2 special conditions of your probation. One is no contact with Matthew Duffy, the person you hit, and then also no contact with Ms. Newborn. I'm assuming she's not someone who is particularly close to you anymore, or am I wrong in assuming that?
No, sir, she's not.
Okay, well, given what you put on her shoulders just now, it's important that you have no contact with her and you let her head in her direction. As for restrictions on your ability to drive, we'll let the statute govern that. And if there are consequences to pleading guilty to felony hit and run, those will occur. I'll just let you know, you should figure those out because if we are together again during the time you are on parole, if you are paroled and you're eligible for parole, or any of your probation time, and you are here because it was a motor vehicle violation, I will revoke as much time as remains. Run a stop sign, speeding, driving without a license, just know not only are you going to pay a $100 fine, but you will spend the rest of your sentence back in custody because you weren't driving carefully. And in fact, you may have been driving when you weren't supposed to drive. We'll deal with restitution should there be a hearing and should there be proof of any amount owed to Mr. Duffy. Last thing, I'm sentencing you pursuant to the Probation Options Management Act. And that means that while you're on probation, if you have a minor violation, that would be something like missing a meeting, not getting a ticket, but missing a meeting. You in probation can work through that. But if you get arrested for anything, or there's any moving violation, that will come back to me and you and Mr. Wright and I and probably not Mr. Armstrong anymore, but a colleague of his will work through the consequences. Mr. Armstrong, anything else from the state?
I just wanted for the record to be clear that he is not being sentenced as a Section C recidivist.
You are not being sentenced as a Section C recidivist. I guess that means you're withdrawing the notice because the notice was in effect at the time of the sentence. And you've made, okay, got it. And you made that clear during your colloquy, and I didn't think it was a recidivist sentence. But that is formally withdrawn or waived, and the final disposition will reflect that it's not a repeat offender sentence. Anything else, Mr. Wright?
No, Your Honor.
Officer Jolly, Mr. Christopher will not be released right away. In fact, he'll have to go back into Department of Corrections custody. Do you need to give him any reporting instructions, or that will happen as he's being processed out?
It depends on his address, where he currently resides, as to where he is to report.
Well, that I know. I was just wondering if you were required to give him any instructions. We don't know when he'll likely be paroled before he hits his 2 years of probation. And I just didn't want to, if there was something you needed to tell him, you're welcome to tell him. But like I said, he's not just going back to Rice Street. He'll go back to GDC before he's ultimately released.
Yeah.
No, all of that information, I guess I can email to his attorney, and he can provide it to him.
Sounds good. All right. Thank you.
All right. I'll come see you. All right. Judges, that concludes my business today. May I be excused for today?
Yes. Tomorrow I will see you for Carlisle and O'Neill.
And I was going to, I will be here unless the court has already sort of knows what the court has planned.
I haven't. What was disclosed when we were just having some basic scheduling conversations, and Ms. Feely was here so we could talk about the case because she represents one of the two defendants, is that the state has a scheduling issue with its cell site guy, Detective DeMeester. He cannot testify till Monday, the 15th. And so we will start the trial next week, but probably later in the week.
The only hiccup, I'll send the conflict. I just got an email from DeKalb, and they had a trial potentially scheduled for me on the 9th, which is the next day.
Okay.
But
so if you're not in trial here, they could grab you.
If I'm not in trial, that now takes a different.
That's good to know, because we will try this case, and if what we need to do is pick a jury on Monday or even Tuesday, but tell the jurors, we're not going to need you till Thursday, so they get a day off, we'll do that. So you should assume, and then we'll just have to structure it in a way where you don't get grabbed by another court, that will do Carlisle and O'Neill. And if it's going to work out before then, great, that won't be an issue. But I haven't heard any noises like that, other than from you. You have the gentleman who, if he did anything, it was inside, not the outside one. So the non-fatal alleged shooting. Okay. So your client will be brought over tomorrow if you want to interact with him. I'm going to need to bring him out to tell him the schedule, that we might not start on Monday because there's been family involved and they might want to know what the deal is. So you're welcome to appear virtually if that's easier for your schedule, but we'll certainly talk about the case. I just don't have certainty yet as to when we'll start it. I was hoping we could sneak in a short trial before it, and then pick the jury on Thursday or something, but that won't work if we would lose you.
In not saying it's for sure, but I literally on the way here today saw the email come in where they're inquiring, hey, what's your availability?
Yeah.
When they tried before, the YSL case subpoenaed my guy. So I was in the back room with the client under the subpoena.
Yeah.
So I had to say, hey, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
But now they're saying, are you still under subpoena? My answer would be no.
Right.
But
you have a specially set trial.
Yeah, but on special set.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll sort through that tomorrow.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Mr. Armstrong.
Absolutely, Judge. It's my understanding that there is another criminal matter before the court this afternoon.
There's a plea that's supposed to be at 2, but I'd love to start it earlier.
2 o'clock, I just want to make sure, because I did not see Mr. Jordan in the.
But if you could head him this way, because Mr. Marufo is here with his lawyer.
And we would require an interpreter. We did reach out to your clerk and requested it, so I'm not sure if they're gonna be here right at 2 or.
We're gonna try to get that person here earlier as well, because you did let us know and we ordered up an interpreter. So no one's late yet, but if we can get him here earlier, that's great.
I appreciate that.
In the meantime, are you Mr. Weatherhead?
I am, sir.
Did I pronounce that right?
You did.
Okay. Your lawyer, Ms. Rios, is on this call, and I am going to make her big on the screen there. She is there. Ms. Rios, is Mr. Weatherhead waiving arraignment, or does he want to be formally arraigned?
Waiving, it should already be filed.
Okay, and do you now have good contact information for him?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Weatherhead, tell me why we missed you this morning.
This morning, we left with a 2-hour buffer and we were caught. I was coming from Greensboro, North Carolina.
Oh, is that home for you?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We hit so much traffic and I walked around this courtroom, probably about this courthouse for about 45 minutes before I could find the criminal division, which told me how to get here.
Got it. Okay, it looks like Ms. Rios has been working hard on your behalf, because I even have a change of address. So South Park Drive in Greensboro?
So,
Okay, and then whatever email, cell phone, any electronic stuff you've shared with Ms. Rios. Okay, let me check a couple other things. So you are out on bond, but there are no funky conditions other than you need to come to court. Okay. All right. So here's what's going to happen. No bench warrant. Ms. Rios, having filed the waiver, will get discovery soon in the case. All the paperwork, police reports, whatever the state has, she'll get that. And then she is going to need to meet with you to go over that discovery, so you two can decide how strong or weak the state's case is. If it's appropriate to file motions, Ms. Rios will do that. And I will see you next, either because there's a motions hearing, a motion to suppress, whatever. Or if there aren't motions that make sense to file in your case, then at what's called final plea, which is your last date to enter a plea, if that's what you're going to do in the case, with the ability to withdraw that plea if you don't like the sentence that you get. And I'm not prejudging anything. What may happen with the case is the state dismisses it because they got the wrong guy or who knows what. You and Ms. Rios will work through that. But assuming there's some substance to the state's case, that would be when I'd see you next. But you'll get notice in the mail and Ms. Rios will be reaching out to you. Okay?
thank you.
Any questions? Okay. Ms. Rios, anything else on behalf of Mr. Weatherhead?
No, Mr. Weatherhead, I will be giving you a call.
Okay, thank you, man.
All right. You are free to drive back to South Carolina.
North Carolina.
North Carolina, that too.
Excuse me, Joe.
All right. Thanks, Ms. Rios.
Thank you.
All right. We do have one more plea. Mr. Marufo, you guys can come on up to defense counsel table and be at ease there until we get interpreter and Mr. Jordan.
Is there any particular place you want here, Judge? Or?
You know, it's going to be interesting in the middle because we're going to have an interpreter. And so we'll have Mr. Lares or whoever is doing the interpreting sit on the other side.
That works, Your Honor. Thank you.
Your Honor, this is.
Yes, Officer Jolly.
Yes, so I don't know what the plea is gonna be, but is there any way the attorney can let me know if this will be a possible sex offender, please?
Yes, he'll know because it's negotiated.
Yes, it is going to be sex offender. It's what the offer is 10 years probation to sexual battery and sex offender conditions.
Okay.
That's
Do
the
you
offer.
guys have the paperwork, or should I just go ahead and come up with the sex offender documents?
We do not have it.
Yeah, you should come on by if that's okay. I think I told you before it was fine to stay where you were. I didn't think through that part. So if you don't mind working your way this way.
Sure, I'll be on my way up in a minute.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. And Judge, that was gonna be 2 counts of sexual battery for the 2.
Okay.
And as a note, Your Honor, it is 3 years that the man's license would be suspended on that last.
Really? For
Yeah.
felony hit and run?
Yeah, or for, well, I guess it was for felony. I thought it was for the serious injury by vehicle.
It's not serious injury by vehicle.
Well,
Yeah,
never
that's not how they
mind.
charged it.
Okay, is there anything I need to fill out, Judge? or-
Nope, we're good.
Que el juez va a revisar todos sus derechos, también el fiscal que vamos a hablar sobre este asunto, usted va a mostrar y el juez va a hacer ejercicios que van a decir los hechos del gesto. Good afternoon, Mr. Jordan. Probation sex offender registry and that continued probation on the offer. So they're gonna have that with all that. Okay, but we did have that conversation. So gotcha. So he's good. Oh. Yes, no, so already he ends up being deported. Oh, all right. Sounds good. Good actor, I appreciate it. Yes, sir. And did you guys finish all the paperwork? You might have. Sorry about that. I would have thought copies to the court. That's fine. We just make it apart. I figured we're here to meet you. Okay, I understand. Let me make sure I said it. You might have. I may have missed it. Yeah, you did. So that could be, she said she was coming down with this exhibition of their conditions. And then maybe the exact same, but I would just, because we want to make sure they're with the status, if they're at least here along with school. They're, turned in the probation. Okay. Okay. Sí, ya. Bueno, el fiscal primero va a hacer preguntas, después el juez va a hacer preguntas. Presionamos cómo está la mano. Sí. Pero vamos a verificar que se entiende.
We're waiting on the interpreter, Mr. Jordan.
Yes, sir. This is some specific probation case. But if that's not necessarily there is. Okay, because so I just want to make sure that sure of that, but yeah, if that ends up, I do understand. We don't have to. It's how we're just because I did. Yeah. That's something. Our meeting, but I can't tell you as far as that.
Hello, Mr. Lyles. We're ready for you.
Okay.
Okay, Ms. Rivers, are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, let's get on the record. In 23 SC 191164, State versus Mr. Marufo. The first thing I'm going to do is swear in our translator. Sir, do you swear or affirm that you will translate from English to Spanish and Spanish to English to the best of your ability?
I do, Judge, to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Mr. Marufo, Mr. Lares will be translating everything said in English into Spanish. When you are asked a question, please let Mr. Lares translate it to Spanish before you answer. Even if you understand the question as asked in English.
Okay.
If you ever have a question, let Mr. Lares know, and he and you and your lawyer can discuss it.
Okay.
Great. I think you can take a seat now. I'm going to switch the cameras around. There we go. Great. Okay, Mr. Jordan, when you're ready. And remember, we've got an interpreter, so sort of one sentence at a time.
Yes. Mr. Marufo, can you please raise your right hand?
Do
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before the court in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Usted afirma usted que la declaración que está a punto de dar usted en esta causa va a ser la verdad, toda la verdad y únicamente la verdad.
Sí.
Yes.
Thank you. You may place your hand down. Can you please state your true, correct, and legal name for the court, please?
Acá, por favor, dele entonces al juez su nombre y apellido correcto. Ya. Right now.
Germán Antonio Marufo.
Germán Antonio
Marufo.
Marufo.
Thank you. Are you at this time taking or under the influence of any alcohol, drugs, or medicine?
¿Se encuentra usted en estos momentos bajo los efectos de alguna bebida alcohólica, algún medicamento por prescripción médica?
No.
No.
Is there a medication that you normally take that you have not been given today?
¿Hay algún medicamento que normalmente consume usted pero que hoy dejó de tomar?
No.
No.
How old are you and what is the highest level of education that you've completed?
¿Cuántos años tiene usted? ¿Y cuál es el nivel más alto de educación que completó usted? Es el nivel de educación más alto. The first you said what?
How old are you?
¿Cuántos años?
73 años. 73.
73 years. 73.
And how far did you go in school?
Universitario, abogado en Venezuela y magíster en Derecho Laboral.
University, lawyer in Venezuela, and magister in contract labor law.
Are you able to read, write, and understand the English language?
¿Entiende usted el idioma inglés? ¿Escribe usted en inglés? ¿Lo habla? No.
Do you understand that an interpreter has been provided to assist you if you do not understand what I'm explaining to you?
Entiende que hay un intérprete que está presente para asistirlo, sobre todo si no entiende lo que estoy yo diciendo a usted. ¿Entiende eso? Okay.
Do you understand that you have been charged with 2 counts of child molestation and 1 count of sexual battery against the child?
¿Entiende usted que ha sido acusado de 2 cargos de abuso sexual de un menor de edad y un cargo de agresión sexual?
Sí.
Yes.
And just for the record, Your Honor, this will be a plea to 2 counts of sexual battery.
Counts 1 and 2 are being reduced, or it's one of those counts plus count 3?
Your Honor, the state will move to dismiss count 1 and count 2 will be reduced. And Mr. Marufo will enter a plea to count 3 as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Marufo, do you understand that you have the right to plead either guilty or not guilty to these charges? And if you pled not guilty or remain silent, you would receive a jury trial.
Señor Marufo, ¿entiende usted que a estos cargos puede admitir culpa o declararse no culpable o permanecer en silencio? Si hubiese permanecido en silencio, por ello terminaría siendo juzgado por estos cargos. ¿Entiende usted eso? Yes.
Mr. Marufo, have you had enough time to speak with your attorney, Mr. Alba, about all of the facts and circumstances known to you regarding the charges in this indictment?
Señor Marufo, ¿tuvo usted ocasión de hablar con su abogado, lo que dijo el señor Aldo, sobre los hechos, sobre las circunstancias que ocasionaron esta denuncia y generaron estos cargos? With my lawyer?
Correct.
Correct. Yes.
Have you also discussed any potential defenses?
Y habló con él sobre posible defensa a estos cargos, si hubiese habido alguna. Sí. Yes.
Do you need any more time to discuss this case with your attorney?
¿Necesitaría usted más tiempo para hablar con su abogado sobre esto? No.
Are you satisfied with his services?
¿Está satisfecho con los servicios legales que le prestó?
Sí.
Yes.
Mr. Alba, are you satisfied that your client has a full understanding of this proceeding?
I am.
And Mr. Alba, have you also reviewed the indictment in this case?
I have.
Do you waive formal reading of this indictment?
I do.
Do you also waive any and all defects in this indictment, including any with respect to your client's name?
You need to say it out loud. Oh, he's still, sorry.
I do.
Can you state your name for the record so the court reporter doesn't put Jerome Lee down as counsel for today?
Yes, Your Honor. It's Tristan Alba. That's TRISTANALBA.
Thank you.
Mr. Marufo, do you recall originally having been arrested on the charge of child molestation?
¿Recuerda usted haber sido inicialmente arrestado por el cargo inicial de abuso sexual de un menor de edad? How? What?
Were you arrested at some time in connection with these charges?
¿Fue arrestado en algún momento por estos cargos? Sí. Yes.
Your Honor, the state is unaware of any outstanding warrants that are related to these charges. Mr. Alba, do you know of any outstanding warrants that are related to these charges?
No, I don't. I do not.
Mr. Marufo, do you understand that you are entering a guilty plea to 2 counts of sexual battery?
Señor Marufo, ¿entiende entonces ahora que está admitiendo culpa a 2 cargos de agresión sexual? Yes.
Are you aware that the minimum for that sentence is 1 year and the maximum is 5 years?
¿Sabe usted que es un delito que está penado con un mínimo de 1 año de cárcel, un máximo de 5 años? Yes.
And did your attorney previously advise to you the minimum and maximum sentence for the charges that you are pleading to?
¿El abogado informó a usted previamente de esta audiencia sobre el mínimo y máximo de tiempo que serviría o tiene el riesgo de servir por estos cargos? Yes.
And Mr. Marufo, do you understand that this is a negotiated plea of guilty, which means that the state will recommend to the court the following sentence?
Señor Marufo, entiende usted que esta es una sentencia que ha sido negociada. Por ello, la Fiscalía, una sentencia negociada por su abogado, va a recomendar al juez la siguiente sentencia.
And Your Honor, count 2, as previously discussed, is being reduced to sexual battery against the child. The recommendation for that count is 5 years probation. Mr. Marufo is to register as a sex offender and follow all special conditions of sex offender probation. He is to have no contact with the victim. And Your Honor, we have discussed that if Mr. Marufo does voluntarily deport himself, that at that moment, the sentence would then become suspended.
Okay. I guess you'd need to notify me so I could amend the sentence to a suspended sentence.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And we need to do that carefully because otherwise Mr. Marufo would be in violation of his probation by leaving Georgia.
Correct, Your Honor. As to count 3, the state's recommendation is 5 years probation to run consecutive to count 2. with these same conditions. Mr. Marufo, was that the negotiated recommendation that was communicated to you?
Entonces, ¿entiende usted que esa fue la sentencia que fue negociada y que fue comunicada a usted a través de su abogado? Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that the court does not have to accept that recommendation?
El juez no está obligado a aceptar esa recomendación de sentencia. Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that the court can sentence you to the maximum on these two charges?
De que puede el juez sentenciarlo al máximo por cada uno de estos cargos. Sí. Yes.
Mr. Marufo, do you understand that the charge that you are pleading to is a sexual offense?
¿Entiende usted que el delito al que usted está admitiendo culpa es un delito de índole sexual? Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that you will be subject to additional special conditions of probation as a result of pleading guilty to a sexual offense?
¿Entiende usted que por admitir culpa a un delito sexual queda usted para servir de manera adicional condiciones especiales que le van a imponer en su supervisión? Sí. Yes.
Have you been informed of these additional special conditions of probation?
¿Se le ha informado a usted sobre estas condiciones adicionales especiales de supervisión por la oficina de probation? ¿Han dicho que son? Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that there will be documents that you will have to fill out, including the sex offender special conditions of probation form?
Entiende que va a tener usted que llenar ciertos documentos, adicionalmente incluyendo los documentos que la persona que admite culpa por delitos sexuales debe llenar y supervisar. Sí. Yes.
The mandatory polygraph submission form.
Un documento es, queda usted obligado de manera mandatoria a presentarse para hacerse polígrafo. ¿Entiende? Yes.
The restrictions for computer use form.
El formulario que le restringe, le impide utilizar computadores. ¿Entiende ustedes? Sí. Yes.
And finally, the additional conditions for electronic monitoring form.
Y finalmente, condiciones adicionales que le permiten ser usted monitoreado electrónicamente. Yes.
Do you understand that you will be required to sign and complete these forms?
Entiende entonces que se requiere que usted firme esos formularios. ¿Entiende usted? Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that as a result of a conviction for this offense, that you will be required to register as a sex offender?
Igualmente, entiende usted que por ser convicto por este tipo de delito, queda usted obligado a registrarse en el registro de personas que han admitido culpa a delitos sexuales. Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that if you are placed on probation of any kind, you cannot violate any criminal laws of any governmental unit or any special conditions of probation without being subject to revocation for the balance of the sentence?
Debe usted entender que si queda usted sujeto a supervisión por la unidad de probation o supervisión, usted no puede incumplir con ninguna norma que le imponga esa unidad de supervisión. Inclusive, no puede usted incumplir ninguna de las condiciones especiales que ellos le van a imponer a usted. Si esto ocurre, entonces quedaría usted revocado de ese tipo de supervisión que probation haría sobre su sentencia con usted. ¿Y ustedes? Yes.
Do you understand that this is a guilty plea which is permanently recorded on your criminal history?
Debe entender que su admisión de culpa, y es una, la que ofrece, genera un antecedente penal que permanecería contra usted para siempre, como un antecedente. Yes.
Do you understand that this plea may be used to enhance sentencing on other convictions in this jurisdiction as well as in the other jurisdictions, including federal courts?
Debe entender que su admisión de culpa y la convicción que genera la misma puede ser utilizada en su contra en el futuro para incrementar en el futuro, si usted entrara por algún nuevo delito, en esta jurisdicción y o inclusive en la jurisdicción de los tribunales federales. ¿Entiende usted? Yes.
Are you currently on probation or parole?
¿Se encuentra usted actualmente o presentemente bajo supervisión por alguna otra sentencia o bajo libertad supervisada por haber servido tiempo en alguna cárcel? No.
Are you a United States citizen?
¿Es usted ciudadano norteamericano? No. No.
Do you understand that a guilty plea conviction will affect your immigration status?
¿Entiende usted que su admisión de culpa, la convicción que genera la misma, va a afectar, impactar negativamente su estatus de inmigrante en el país? Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that this plea may result in deportation?
¿Entiendes que esta admisión de culpa puede generar tu deportación? Sí. Yes.
And do you understand that these things are true regardless of any advice by your attorney or anyone else?
Esto que te digo debes entender que es la verdad, sin importar lo que hayas escuchado decirle a usted, su abogado o cualquier otra persona al respecto. Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that there may be other adverse or unfavorable consequences as a result of this guilty plea conviction, just as there would be from a conviction following a trial?
Debes entender que esta convicción va a generar circunstancias desfavorables, adversas, tal y como si hubiese habido un juicio, hubiese perdido el juicio y hubiese sido encontrado convicto de estos delitos en un juicio. ¿Entiendes eso? Yes.
Do you understand that your guilty plea may affect your right to vote?
Debes entender que tu convicción o admisión de culpa impacta negativamente aquí tu derecho a votar. ¿Entiendes eso? Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that it will affect your right to hold public office?
Igualmente debes entender que afectará esta convicción la oportunidad que tienes de, si la llegas a tener, a servir en oficina pública. Sí. Yes.
Do you understand it might affect your right to serve on a jury?
Tienes que puede afectar el derecho que tienes a ser parte de un jurado o servir en uno. Yes.
Do you understand it may affect your right to obtain a passport?
Igualmente debe entender que puede impactar o afectar el derecho a obtener un pasaporte. ¿Entiendes eso? Yes.
Do you understand it may affect your right to receive, possess, or transport a firearm?
Igualmente debe entender que afectará el derecho que tienes de recibir, poseer o tener o transportar armas de fuego. Yes.
And finally, do you understand it may affect your ability to obtain employment?
Igualmente debes entender que puede impactar negativamente la habilidad que tienes para conseguirte un trabajo. Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty to a felony, if you use, receive, possess, or transport a firearm, or use a firearm during the crime, you will be guilty of a felony?
Debes entender que por esta convicción, si luego usas un arma de fuego, la posees, la transportas, la utilizas, serías culpable de una felonía o delito mayor por ello. Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that felony may carry a sentence of 1 to 15 years in prison?
Debes entender que por esa felonía, si la llegas a generar, es una que sería penada entre 1 y 15 años de cárcel. Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that you waive any and all defenses, including any mental health defenses, by entering a plea of guilty?
Debes entender que renuncias a cualquier y todas las defensas que hubieras podido tener, inclusive a una defensa por razones o índole de problemas mentales. ¿Entiendes eso? Yes, yes.
Do you understand that if you went to trial, you would have the right to a trial by jury?
Debes entender entonces que si hubieses tenido un juicio, hubieses tenido el derecho a tener un juicio ante un jurado. ¿Entiendes eso? Yes.
The right to see, hear, and confront witnesses called to testify against you.
El derecho a ver, a escuchar y a interrogar a los testigos que hubiesen sido llamados a declarar en tu contra. Yes.
And finally, the right to testify or to remain silent and not incriminate yourself.
Y por último, el derecho a declarar o a permanecer en silencio, a no incriminarte en tu propio juicio. ¿Tienes eso? Yes.
Do you understand that by pleading guilty, you are giving up the following rights?
Debes entender entonces que por admitir culpa vas a renunciar ahora a los siguientes derechos.
The right to a trial by jury.
El derecho a tener un juicio ante un jurado. Yes.
The right to remain silent and not incriminate yourself.
El derecho a permanecer en silencio, a no incriminar. Yes.
The right to confront witnesses called to testify against you.
El derecho a encarar a testigos que hubiesen sido llamados a declarar en tu contra. Yes.
The right to the assistance of counsel hired by you or to a court-appointed counsel if you could not afford an attorney at a trial of your case.
El derecho a ser asistido por un abogado contratado por ti, o el derecho a tener un abogado que estuviese designado del tribunal si no hubiese tenido la oportunidad de contratar uno por tus propios medios. Yes.
The right to the presumption of innocence.
Renuncias al derecho que tienes a la presunción de inocencia. Yes.
The right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence.
Renuncias al derecho a declarar a tu favor y a introducir pruebas diferentes a las que hubiesen recabado. How is it?
You asked the question again?
Yes. The right, well, I'm sorry, was it
These are
the,
rights he's waiving. What's
Yes.
the right you just shared with him?
I believe it was the right to testify on your own behalf and to present other evidence.
Pues le pregunto que se te repita, pues el derecho a declarar a tu favor y a introducir otras pruebas. Renuncia a ese derecho. Yes.
The right to subpoena witnesses and compel the production of evidence.
También renuncias el derecho que tienes a que por orden del tribunal presenten pruebas diferentes y a introducir, si las hubiese, esas pruebas. Yes.
The right to have the charges against you proved beyond a reasonable doubt.
El derecho a que comprueben o demuestren, más allá de toda duda razonable, los cargos que levantaron en tu contra. Yes.
And finally, the right to appeal if convicted of these charges after a trial.
Y por último, el derecho a apelar si te hubiesen encontrado culpable al final del juicio. Yes.
Has anyone forced, threatened, or promised you anything to get you to enter a guilty plea?
Te forzó a alguien, te amenazó a alguien, te prometió a alguien alguna cosa para llevarte a que hoy admitieses culpa aquí. No.
Is it your decision to waive these rights and enter a guilty plea because you are in fact guilty?
Es tu decisión renunciar a estos derechos y de hecho ofrecer una admisión de culpa ahora a estos cargos porque de hecho eres culpable de ellos. Sí. Yes.
Mr. Marufo, how do you plead to 2 counts of sexual battery in indictment number 23 SC 191164?
Señor Marufo, ¿cómo se declara 2 cargos ahora de agresión sexual bajo el documento acusatorio 23 SC 191164? ¿Cómo se declara? Guilty.
Is this guilty plea freely and voluntarily given with the full knowledge of the charges against you?
Esta admisión de culpa la ofrece usted de manera libre y voluntaria, con pleno conocimiento de las consecuencias de lo que está haciendo. Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that you have 30 days in which to appeal your conviction based on your plea today?
Debe entender que tiene 30 días a partir de hoy para apelar esta convicción que acaba de ofrecer. ¿Entiende eso? Sí. Yes.
Do you understand that you have only 4 years from today to file a habeas corpus petition challenging the voluntariness of this guilty plea?
Se le dan a partir de hoy hasta 4 años para introducir un recurso conocido como el recurso de habeas corpus, a través del cual se objeta o se opone a la manera voluntaria de su participación en este proceso de sentencia. Sí. Yes.
And Your Honor, for a factual basis, on June 13th of 2022, an officer from the Roswell Police Department made contact with Mr. Enrique Morales, that's spelled ENRIQUE, last name Morales, MORALES, by phone in reference to a child abuse claim from July of 2020. Mr. Morales is a resident of Florida. and stated that his juvenile daughter, the victim in this case, had been molested during a family trip at 216 Ashley Forest Drive, which is within the confines of Fulton County. Mr. Morales stated that the victim, his daughter, stood up and started crying during a family conversation that had occurred a few days prior. Mr. Morales stated that his daughter told him that the defendant, whom is her uncle, had touched her inappropriately. These actions included touching the victim in her private areas and taking the juvenile victim's hand and placing them on his private parts. Soon thereafter, Detective Dickerson of the Roswell Police Department was assigned the case and worked with the child protection team at the Howard Phillips Center for Children and Families in Orlando, Florida, to have a forensic interview scheduled. A forensic interview was conducted in which the victim disclosed that she had sustained abuse at the hands of the defendant via him going inside of her underwear, and also included a claim that the defendant used to make his genitalia make contact with the victim's feet. Because there was not.
Slow down.
Yes.
Well, not slow down. I'm sorry. Just stop for a second.
Yes.
I apologize. Sorry.
No, it's not a sorry. And Mr. Jordan's actually doing a great job of not going too quickly here. And if Mr. Marufo has a question, we should pause for that. Mr. Marufo, did you have enough time to speak with your lawyer?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Jordan, let's keep going.
Yes. Detective Dickerson requested a second forensic interview to get more detail surrounding the abuse. That second forensic interview was not conducted until October 28th of 2022. In between that time, Detective Dickerson received several emails from other family members of the victim, whom also detailed abuse that they had sustained at the hands of the defendant. These victims included the victim's mother, Miss Angelica Morales.
Who has what relationship to Mr. Marufo?
Your Honor, I believe that Miss Morales would be the niece of the defendant.
So then the original child you were speaking about would be like a grand niece or something, because you said the relationship was that Mr. Marufo was her uncle, but he would be a great uncle or something even more removed.
I believe that's correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
And Miss Angelica Morales also detailed abuse that she had sustained at the hands of the defendant when she was a child. During the second forensic interview, the victim disclosed that when she was 8 years old, the defendant forced her to sit on his lap, and she felt his genitals jump, as she described it. She stated that on one occasion, the defendant put his hand in her underwear and did not stop until an adult cousin came in the room. The victim stated that while going through her first communion prep classes, she disclosed the abuse to her family. Based upon these claims by the victim child, whose initials are VM, on February 8th of 2023, Mr. Marufo was taken into custody for, at that time, charges of child molestation and cruelty to children in the first degree. These events did take place in Fulton County, Georgia. Your Honor, in preparation for this case, the father and mother of the victim expressed extreme concerns with having their daughter testify in any court proceedings, given the extreme emotional state which she would go into anytime the abuse is discussed. The victim's mother is also now pregnant and has a high-risk pregnancy, so travel for testimony, given that they live in Florida, would be very difficult. Ms. Kristen Clark, the victim advocate, does have a victim impact statement that the parents have prepared.
Should I start now, Judge?
Hold on one second. Okay. Good afternoon, Ms. Clark. If you'd like to share that, now would be a good time.
Okay. The statement reads, "Good afternoon. This is to thank each of the people who have accompanied us throughout this difficult process. They have been quite delicate, but with excellent management, empathy, patience, dedication, respect, and communication, collaboration have figured out a way to handle our case and find the best solution to the case."
All right, I'm gonna have you pause for a second. The interpreter needs to keep up. So if you could do it one sentence at a time, that'd be great. All right, next.
"There is no sentence that can eliminate the damage and suffering that has been caused to our daughter and to us as a family.
Okay.
But we have always trusted in the justice system of the United States of America.
All right.
And thanks to the good people working our case, today this man, German Marufo, will pay for the damage he has done.
All right.
He will not harm any children again.
All right.
And thank you all for your help and understanding once again." And that concludes the statement, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. So, Mr. Jordan, hearing that makes me think that the family expects something more than just probation.
Your Honor, we did communicate the negotiated plea to the family. They do understand that this is a probated sentence.
They understand that without their daughter testifying, there's no case to be made against Mr. Marufo.
Correct, Your Honor.
So that in order to protect her from further trauma, they are willing to leave you with a case that you have to negotiate to probation.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay. Anything else you want to share?
Your Honor, the Defendant's age was also a major consideration in regards to the negotiated plea that we eventually reached. Nothing further from the state, Your Honor.
I'm just looking one thing up and then. This is the same case where you've had some struggles getting counseling records for VM from, I guess it's a Venezuelan doctor.
That is correct, Your Honor. The counseling sessions happened in Florida, but the therapist, from our understanding, is Venezuelan and is not licensed in the United States.
Okay, and my concern wasn't so much the unlicensed practice of therapy as it was like she was reluctant, this therapist, to engage with your office for fear that she might have practiced without a license.
Yes, Your Honor, that is correct.
And the result of her fear or reluctance, you were never able to obtain the records that you had been directed to obtain.
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay.
And Your Honor, if I may add, the additional family members who sent emails to Roswell Police Department were also reluctant to testify about the abuse that they had sustained as well.
Some of these alleged victims are now adults?
Yes, Your Honor. All of the victims who sent emails are now adults.
Was your sense that they were afraid of Mr. Marufo, or that it would just be traumatic to relive the details of their abuse?
Traumatic to relive the details of their abuse, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Ms. Jackson, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Judge.
Do you have criminal history information on Mr. Marufo?
Yes, Your Honor. He does not have any prior arrests on file.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
When you're ready.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, we would ask that you set the plea as negotiated. My client's 73 years old. He's come from Venezuela, trying to avoid the dangers and violence there. And he came here to get a leg up in the world. He has no prior criminal history, Your Honor. And his wife is currently going through cancer treatments. Your Honor, we would ask that you would accept the plea as negotiated.
What is your understanding of Mr. Marufo's familial relationship with the people who made the outcries?
So, Your Honor, I believe that the mother is a niece.
The mother of VM.
Yes. And that the victim would be, like, as you stated, a grandniece in this case.
Okay. So all of the people intertwined here are of Venezuelan origins. Some have been in the US longer than others, but it's a family with roots in Venezuela.
That's correct, Your Honor. And all the other outcries were also nieces of the Venezuelan family.
So same generation as the victim's mother.
Correct.
Mr. Marufo was a lawyer here in the United States, or he had legal training in Venezuela?
He had legal training in Venezuela, Your Honor, and acted as an attorney in Venezuela, but he has not practiced here.
What did he do here, or did he come here in retirement?
What do you do now?
Como jubilado de la empresa.
¿En la empresa? ¿Cuál?
En el
As a retiree from one of the Venezuelan enterprises called Enelven, Enelven.
Got it. Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
¿Algo más?
Mr. Marufo, is there anything you want to say?
No. No.
Mr. Marufo, do you understand that if I accept your guilty plea, it will likely result in your removal from the United States?
Entiende usted que si acepta su admisión de culpa, que seguramente va a generar, producir su salida, deportación, remoción de los Estados Unidos. Yes.
And given your age, you may not ever legally be able to return to the United States.
Tomando en cuenta su edad, es bastante posible que no pueda usted regresar legalmente a los Estados Unidos. ¿Entiende eso? Yes. Yes.
Counsel, may someone from my office sign your name electronically to the indictment?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Jordan?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Marufo, part of your guilty plea involves you signing the indictment.
Parte de su admisión de culpa en esta audiencia involucra que usted firme el documento acusatorio. Okay.
We do that electronically now?
Hoy en día lo hacemos de forma electrónica. Okay.
Do you authorize me or someone from my staff to sign for you?
Autoriza usted a mí o a alguien de mi oficina, de mi personal, que firme electrónicamente el documento acusatorio por usted. Yes.
Mr. Marufo, as part of your sentence, you will be required to register as a sex offender in Georgia.
Como parte de su sentencia, se exige que se registre usted en el registro de personas convictas de delitos sexuales que lleva el Estado de Georgia. Okay.
Have you and your attorneys discussed what is required of someone on the sex offender registry?
¿Ha usted con su abogado conversado sobre lo que exige ese registro que supervisa a las personas que admiten culpa a delitos sexuales? Yes.
You understand it affects where you can live.
Entiende, por ejemplo, que afecta ese registro donde puede usted aquí residir, por ejemplo. ¿Entiende eso? Yes.
If you were to decide to go back to work, it would also place some limits on where you could work.
Igualmente, si por alguna razón decidiera usted volver a trabajar, eso es aquí, el hecho de ser convicto por estos delitos limitaría, restringiría dónde puede trabajar. Sí. Yes.
Mr. Marufo, I find there's a factual basis for your plea.
Encuentro, señor Marufo, entonces que hay una base legal para su admisión de culpa.
And that your plea is knowing and voluntary.
Y que ha admitido usted culpa a estos cargos de manera voluntaria y con conocimiento de causa. Sí. Yes.
Has anyone threatened you in any way or promised you anything in connection with your plea?
¿Amenazó a alguien de alguna manera o forma o le prometió a alguien alguna cosa a usted con respecto a esta sentencia negociada? No. No.
Mr. Marufo, this case is working out well for you because the people you hurt are still hurting.
Marufo, este caso está siendo resuelto de una manera favorable para usted, solo porque las personas que fueron heridas o lesionadas están haciéndolo así.
And the people who care about them have decided that it is more important
Y las personas que bueno, están
for the victims to stay out of court
han decidido que es más importante no dejar que estas víctimas
than it is to have a more serious sentence imposed.
para así evitar que hubiese posiblemente generado contra usted una pena o una sentencia mucho más severa que la que está recibiendo. Yes.
Count one has been dismissed.
Cargo número 1 ha sido anulado.
Count two, the state has recommended a term of 5 years probation.
Cargo número 2, la Fiscalía ha recomendado que lo sentencia a 5 años de supervisión por la Oficina de Probation o Libertad a Prueba.
And count three, the state has recommended the same sentence to run concurrently.
El cargo número 3, la Fiscalía ha recomendado la misma sentencia, pero que se la cumpla de manera concurrente.
And they've reduced count two to the same charge as count three.
Y redujeron el cargo número 2, que es un delito mayor, al mismo cargo número 3.
Tell me about the treatment your wife is receiving.
Pues quiere que le diga, por favor, ahora, ¿qué tratamiento es el que está su esposa actualmente enfrentando?
Cáncer en un riñón. Le hicieron una operación.
Cancer,
Está en eso.
cancer in one of her kidneys for which she had to have surgery. So she's undergoing that treatment right now.
Is she able to walk around and take care of herself?
Puede ella por su cuenta cuidarse a sí misma, puede caminar por sí misma.
Ahorita lo está haciendo acompañado.
Presently, she's doing that right now with me assisting her generally.
Are there other people in your household?
Hay otras personas en su casa.
Sí.
Yes.
Who else helps take care of her besides you?
Además de usted, ¿quién más la ayuda a ella o a usted a cuidarla? Only me.
Who else is in the household?
Pero dijo, ¿quién más está en casa?
Mi hijo
My son
y su pareja.
and his present partner.
How old is your son?
¿Qué edad tiene su hijo?
23 años.
23 years.
Why does he not help take care of his mother?
Porque él no ayuda a su mamá.
Está trabajando, quien tiene más contacto soy yo con él.
He's working and I'm the one who has more contact with her.
Who is taking care of her right now while you are in court? Was she okay by herself for a while?
¿Quién está en estos momentos, ya que usted está en corte, cuidando de ella o ella puede por su propia cuenta estar por algún tiempo, no muy largo de tiempo?
Sí, sí.
Okay. Yes.
Puedo, yes.
Yes, yes, she is able to by herself.
Will she go back to Venezuela with you?
¿Regresaría ella a Venezuela con usted si sale?
Si vamos a salir, siempre andamos.
If we are going to leave, yes, we have always been together.
How old was Mr. Jordan VM in July of 2020.
8 years old, Your Honor.
So she's going to turn 12 this month.
I believe she may have turned 12 in May.
Okay, so
And Your Honor, if I may, the state's intention was to have count 3 run consecutive.
did I say concurrent? I
Yes.
misspoke. No, I understand it's 10 years probation.
And that was the agreement, Judge.
And that's how I understood it. I used the wrong C word. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do at the front end of this. I'm gonna let you talk to your client for a minute. I'm inclined to have Mr. Marufo go to jail for a week. He did 3 days in connection with this. And he needs to further appreciate the seriousness of what happened, but that may be problematic with the situation with his wife. Plan B would be 4 weekends in jail. So that's a little more time, less immediate. He could go now, 7 days, or he could do 4 weekends, and that would be time to just make sure something's in place for his wife. Neither of that is what's negotiated. He can say no, thank you, and we'll get a trial date for this. I appreciate that is an exceedingly small amount of time in jail, but for someone of your client's age and with what's going on in his household, it's not inconsequential. And I think it better reflects the severity of the harm that he did, it sounds like, fairly widely throughout part of his family. So why don't you spend a couple moments speaking with him and let me know, again, so we're clear, 3 choices. It's basically 10 years to serve 1 week balance probated, 10 years probation with a special condition of 4 weekends, or forget it, Judge, we'll roll the dice and go to trial, and the dismiss count is undismissed. Okay?
Thank you, Your Honor.
And we'll go off the record for a minute while you guys confer.
Thank you. Pero él ha cambiado un poco de esta presión que está viendo, que va a sacarse de una semana. Puede entrar hoy día y no nos sería una semana y además va a ser o que podemos hacer es que usted tiene 4 fines de semana que va a ir a la cárcel antes de tiempo que va a hacer. El fin de semana va a entrar a la cárcel y salgas como el lunes y regresas a su casa y después el próximo. Entonces, por 4 semanas. Entonces, por eso estaba diciendo que si tomas la segunda opción, puede que es buscar ir a cárcel cada fin de semana nada más, por 4 semanas, entonces sería como 8 días en total. Que busques a alguien que puede cuidarlo por ese tiempo. O la tercera opción sería que usted nada más vamos al juicio.
How do you say weekend?
Perdemos.
It was weekends, not week. I don't mean to.
I said end of the week.
Okay, as long as you were, I want to be clear. I thought I heard you say 4 weeks. It's not. Okay, good. You got it. Not my space.
Nada más quería verificar que estaba diciendo cada semana, 4 semanas. En realidad es su decisión de qué quiere hacer. Si entras hoy día, nada más sería una semana en total. Pero si no, vas a hacer 4 fines de semana, como sábado y domingo. Pero es su opción. Si vamos al juicio, va a haber 4 semanas. Okay. Your Honor, he has made a decision. He said he wants to go with the 4 weekends. He understands it's gonna be now 8 days instead of the 7 days. But that way he'll have time to figure out what he needs to do with his wife and
Okay.
get her help.
Sure, and it's shorter blocks of time when he's away from her,
Correct.
so his son can help out. So I'll pronounce sentence. Your sentence on count 1 is no sentence. That's been dismissed. Count 2, which has been reduced to sexual battery against a child under 16, is 5 years probation. Count 3 is 5 years probation to run consecutive to count 2 for a total of 10 years probation. Special condition number 1, register as a sex offender. Special condition number 2, no contact with VM or any of her family, her mother, her father, etc. And special condition number 3 is 4 weekends in jail. You will report to the county jail by 5 p.m. on a Friday, and you'll be released by 5 p.m. on a Sunday. And that will start this Friday, July 5th, and it is for 4 consecutive weekends. It's all the weekends of July. If you have an emergency and cannot make it to the jail, you need to let your lawyer know immediately so he can let me know. If you miss any one of those weekends, that is a violation of your probation. And if there's not a valid excuse for missing, I will revoke your probation. Mr. Jordan, anything else in Mr. Marufo's case?
Nothing further from the state, Your Honor.
Anything on behalf of Mr. Marufo?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
We have a probation officer here who is going to help with the forms that Mr. Marufo needs to fill out. I'm going to ask Mr. Lares to stay to help with those forms. Mr. Marufo, I wish your wife good health.
Amen.
Thank you.
Thank you. Once we get this done, may we be excused?
Definitely.
Thank you.
Officer Jolly, you all set? You know who you need to work with?
Yep, I do have those.
Oh, great. You'll manage them and then I'll get involved when I need to. Excellent. Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Mr. Jordan. So you guys are off the consolidated trial calendar,
Thank you,
just
Your Honor.
like that. I think that is it. There was an Angelica Gonzalez on. Was that someone we were supposed to hear from, or that's someone following for the family?
That was the executive mother, Your Honor.
Okay. Great. She's welcome to have been involved.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Jackson. And thanks, Ms. Rivers. I will see some of you tomorrow for our, I guess a lot of you tomorrow for our trial calendar call.
Okay, no problem. Okay, have a great one, Judge.
All right, you too. I'm going to end the Zoom.